Hey everybody, it's Dr. Stephanie Rimka, and I am still at home. I think doing this from home seems to be a little bit more comfortable for me than doing it from the office. And before I went off to the office, I wanted to give you a little preview of my favorite kind of new product at this point. It's been several months we've been using it, but the more I learn, the more I know. Axel is always stealing the show. That is my dog. I'll have to plan better. But all of you who come into the office love and adore him. He's there every day. He's our little service therapy dog, who rescued me one day at a shelter. Anyway, back to what you tuned in for. What's going on with all the gas, bloating, gastrointestinal disorders we have going on? I'm going to do a longer live on this one product because it is probably it is the only product actually I recommend to every single person in my office. We do a lot of functional testing, metabolic testing, lots of different panels on people to get to the nitty-gritty of what you specifically need. However, this seems to be one that I am just blown away by and everybody needs. So what's the deal with it? I'm going to first give you a real quick history on bacteria. And we seem to be getting the story on bacteria completely wrong. So this was a story that I was taught in graduate school, in chiropractic school, and it was kind of mind-blowing at the time. And the reason they were telling us this story is that medicine gets it wrong significantly and usually ostracizes and criticizes the person who is the one who's telling this big truth that has to break this fundamental way of doing things. So someone comes along, finds a problem, tells you what it is. Everybody says that person is an absolute lunatic. And of course, 100 years later, that thing that they thought was so crazy back then is just this assumptive truth, and you think, how can anybody ever have thought that wasn't true? So in 1847, so mid-19th century, there was this physician called Semmelweis, the proper German, and I'm part German and I don't speak German, so I'm doing the best I can, but it was Semmelweis, and he was a physician. 1847, it was nasty, gory, bloody, it was gross. They were just cutting people open, throwing some alcohol on the body, I don't even know if they were numbing them out at all, but this was the basic practice. You do some type of surgical procedure, cut something off, cut someone open, and you're covered in blood, just smeared with it, and you just go to the next room and the next person covered in blood and covered in blood. No one knew anything about a microorganism, an invisible magical creature that could possibly be touching your skin or doing anything else, right? So Semmelweis had a theory, and he said, I think, because a lot of babies were dying, and he goes, I wonder if there's something that I am doing when I cut somebody open and I'm covered in all this blood and I go to somebody else and cut them in blood. I wonder if I'm passing along the infection. So he did a little study, and he found that if he washed his hands, and he had all the surgeons under his observation, he had the surgeons do this crazy thing, like wash your hands. And they did it in chlorinated lime. At the time, that was a safe disinfectant, and it turns out they actually decrease the infant childhood fever, septicemia, and they would die from this infectious disease. They decrease the death rate from 18% down to 2% from simply washing their hands. Now, he didn't say there's some type of bacteria or something, but in essence, he said, I think there's something that is causing an infection, and as the surgeons, we're moving it around person to person. So he asked all the doctors to wash their hands before they touched a pregnant woman. He said, I think we should all wash our hands in this stuff before we touch someone who's pregnant. That idea to wash your hands of some magical thing, which was bacteria, that's what we're going to say right now, was so outrageous to the physicians at that time. He was completely ostracized, blackballed. They kind of mentally tortured him to the point he kind of went mad, or at least was locked in an insane asylum. He was actually locked away and died at 47 years old of septicemia, which is infection throughout his entire body. Not ironic, it's just tragic. So, bacteria. Some guy came along and said, I think we should wash our hands. I think there's something going on here. Don't touch the pregnant ladies when you're covered in blood after you just cut somebody's bowels open. Okay. That was considered crazy in 1847. Nowadays, a surgeon is scrubbing themselves head to toe. You want to make everything as sterile as possible. So then we went into the phase of discovering, oh, there are bacteria. Oh gosh, they're pathogenic. Oh my gosh, kill everything. Then the miracle came along of the antibiotic. Biotic means bacteria. So anti-bug. Let's kill them. So we went to war, and we started doing everything we can. And it went from the drugs to the people, put them in all the animals, put it in the soap, put it in the shampoo, just everywhere. We want to spray it, kill it, Lysol it, bleach it, kill all the things. Well, then they started discovering, oops, I think we need some of those things. They're naturally in our body. They're from all in my nose and my mouth, everywhere. This is the beginning of my digestive tract is right here, and then it goes all the way down and comes out the other end. And it's covered in bugs that are supposed to be there. So then they started learning more and more of what they're doing, and then we said, uh-oh, I think we should start putting in some bugs back in because we've killed them all, and so we're going to start selling and making probiotics. Good idea. So here's the story. Poor bacteria went from some guy suggesting you should wash your hands, Semmelweis, and being a radical and being completely ostracized. So again, history continually shows us when somebody has a correct radical view, they completely get told by everybody they're completely crazy. This guy's a lunatic. Absolutely can't be. And then, 100 years later or so, it's just an assumptive fact. So you can go back through history and find this over and over again. Is the earth flat? Does the sun revolve around us? Etc., etc. And we can do that. GMOs are totally safe. Okay? You get the picture. So that's bacteria. That's its story. So then we're like, we got to start putting them back in. Well, it gets even bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the next talk, I'm going to post down in the comments at some point and kind of let you know when I'm going to schedule a longer live and do a really long in-depth conversation on this product Restore. But what this is, I'm going to show you, I'm going to flip it. All right, so right here in my kitchen, these are my actual products. So I keep this one, it's a little small bottle, I keep it right on my counter, right? And this is what I do. I'm going to do it right now. I shake it, I open it, take a little cup, and I've marked it because I'm lazy. And I just go, oh yeah, that's about my teaspoon. And then I drink it, which I'm going to do. And then it's gone. And I'm super lazy, so then I just even do that. Like, I don't rinse it, wash it. I'm not worried about any of that. So my son can see it. He's 11. He can come get it himself, squeeze it in the thing. It's not complicated. I keep a bigger one up in the shelf, and I just keep refilling this to make it easier for me to pour and all of that, and it's cheaper to get a big one. Then this is my small one that can go in my purse, and I take it with me so when I'm out and about. I use it before I eat out in a restaurant or my midday kind of thing, or traveling on a plane. You can totally take this through security. It's the right size, so they made sure to do that. So, what is the deal with this stuff? And why do I recommend it to everybody? It is basically a carbon molecule, and it's a bunch of different ones, that bacteria make. So it's a byproduct that all the bacteria in the soil are making to communicate with each other. It is the bacterial cellular communication network. So bacteria in the soil and all over our body are supposed to be able to talk to each other. It's why under a natural farming practice, before we started using, so I mean natural, when farmers were just farming and they didn't have 14,000 drugs and chemicals to throw on their lawn, yeah, we do it on our lawn too, on the crops. If a fungus or an infection would happen on one side, by the time it got to the other side of the plot of land, those plants would be resistant to it. And people couldn't figure out what it was. But what it is the bacteria in the soil and the plants are able to communicate with each other via these redox signals. These are carbon-based, they are carbon molecules, right? They have a very, each species talks to itself in a different way. So they're all different, have a little bit of a signature, like a snowflake. And they can talk to each other in the soil. So that's why they tell, hey, this is what's coming. You guys need to prepare. And they do. Hey, there's these parasites. You guys, you need to, and then the plant figures out, and the bugs, they figure out how to make something to try and prevent that from damaging it. And this has gone on. This is how things have survived. They talk to each other. It's a network. So when we started trying to kill all the bacteria with all our antibiotics, and the biggest one that hit the soil without a doubt that's destroying everything is the antibiotic called glyphosate that was in Monsanto's, it still is in Monsanto's product called Roundup. It has gone kind of generic, and there's other people making it now. It's not just in Roundup anymore. It's made by other people besides, I think, Monsanto at this point, and most of it's made in China. And we know they keep the highest standards in quality and safety in their products at this point. So, sarcasm. So, Restore. It's a liquid compound that is nothing but the carbon signature that the bacteria in the soil make to talk to each other. Now, we've killed this bacteria in our soil from our farming practices, from all these herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, GMO, and the big mamma jamma glyphosate. And that started rolling out, I think, in 1992, or might have even been sooner, earlier than that. So they had to bore down and get it out of the soil. Somewhere in the 50 million to 60 million years ago, the topsoil down there, 50 or 60 doesn't really matter, but that's how far back they had to go to find this structure that recreates in our body when we take it. Basically, the cellular communication network, it like puts the cell towers back up. All the bacteria can finally talk to each other again. They're like, oh my gosh. And so they tell everybody what to do. They're like, hey, we need more magnesium. Hey, we got it. You have too much E. coli. Oh my gosh. Hey, you need to grow more because this candida's out of control. Well, like, candida, stop growing. So most of the problems are not, oh, you have candida, or oh, you have this. It's the breakdown in the communication. We can get a little deeper into that, but that's the biggest thing it does, because once it increases that communication, it then goes off to the brain and restores the communication of the network and of all the bacteria that are all in your sinuses and in your brain. The blood-brain barrier tightens that up. So it restores the communication of the community of all the bugs that are actually here keeping you alive. The bugs are there to keep you alive. Some of us needed to kill them. You need to wash those hands. Like, it's a little bit too much. You don't cut one person up and then cut another person up and just that's a little much. But there's this normal communication balance of the bugs that are supposed to be with us. They're keeping us alive. And it gets real deep as to what we're doing with them and how we're using their DNA to do everything for us, how they're protecting us from cancer, how they're brilliant, the symbiotic relationship we've developed with them over the eons. So that's why I recommend Restore to everybody. It does that. That's the most important thing. But what it also does is it restores the structure, right? So the actual gut lining, it closes down what are called tight junctions, and that heals what everyone's talking about in leaky gut. So it stops the toxic products that the body makes, it's called zonulin is the big one, from leaking into the bloodstream and going and attacking your nervous system. And it stops that cascading issue of chronic inflammation that goes on all over the body, which is the main source of all disease. So it gets real intense as to what the gut is actually doing and how the lymphatic tissue's there and how the immune system's there and what the DNA is doing and how we're using the bugs to alter use them as our own DNA. And I want to get into that all later, but the gist is, I get the question like, well, what is Restore? It's a dietary supplement that is a carbon snowflake, basically, that's made by bacteria. It allows the bacteria in your own body to finally start being able to talk to each other so they can do their job, which is to heal and protect you, bring you balance, make all your right neurotransmitters the way you're supposed to do, decrease that anxiety. And it closes down the tight junctions. So what does that mean? It means you can eat things that maybe have been making you sick, and you can start to eat them again. Now, we got to give it some time. If you have something especially like Hashimoto's, celiac, things like that, it's going to take a while. You're going to have to give your body, I think, a long time, and we need to do a bunch of stuff. I would not want people like start doing this for 6 weeks and start eating gluten again if they have a gluten sensitivity. But a lot of people are able to eat things that they thought they had an allergy to after a few weeks of using this, because within 6 days of consistent use of this, your tight junctions will be tight. They'll be healed. Now, you have to continue to take it for them to stay tight, but when I get people on this, I take them off all the probiotics, take them off the enzymes, take them off a whole lot of things I used to do, so they're saving a ton of money. And I'll go into why we do that at a later time. So the product is Restore. I'll show you my little travel one. You basically just take it 3 times a day. The effects last for roughly 6 to 8 hours. Every person is different, so I say stay on the safe side when you're starting. Average dose is a teaspoon each time. And what it's doing, it's literally changing the structures in your cells and closing them down so their connections with each other are really, really tight, so poisons cannot leave your intestinal tract and get into your blood and then go all over your body, rip your nerves apart, rip your brain apart. This is hugely, hugely important for kids on the spectrum, ADHD, sensory integration disorders, absolutely. Then you add in the gastrointestinal disorders, diverticulitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, irritable bowel syndrome. I would say at that point, I'm at least at 9 out of 10 people I'm talking about, maybe 100%, because I rarely see a kid who doesn't have those things at this point, my own included. So they're just coming in at a big disadvantage from the chemical toxicity and what we've done to them and done to our earth. So until we can fix the earth, and there's a lot we're going to talk about to do that, I'm going to protect myself, I'm going to protect my son, I'm going to protect my family, and be able to open up to eating a little bit different things without so much fear and anxiety that we're going to rip apart the gut, we're going to have a massive reaction, we're going to have brain inflammation from it, we're going to have behavioral disorders from it. Because as many parents can tell you, especially on the spectrum, they can take their kids off something and you give them one cracker 6 weeks later and the stimming starts instantly. Well, this blocks what gluten does to the intestine. It stops what gliadin does to the intestine, and it stops what glyphosate's doing to the intestine. And we'll go into that more in detail. But it is the only product I recommend to everyone who walks in my office at this point. And I can stop them from taking a number of things they've been taking and save them a ton of money, and actually are maybe creating a larger imbalanced flora than they actually were aware of. All right, so that's it for now. But I will be looking maybe in the next week, doing a longer one. I'll schedule that. I'll let you guys know when it's going to happen. And I'll do a lot of Q&A on what this is, so people can really, really get all their specific questions answered about how it can help you, help your family, and save you money for sure in the long run. All right, have a great day. Talk to you guys later.